There comes a moment when a Sigma male stops reacting, stops proving, and stops explaining, not because he's cold, but because he's finally in control. His silence isn't weakness, it's precision. His distance isn't avoidance, it's clarity. Detachment becomes his weapon, not to escape emotion, but to master it. He's been burned before, by chaos, by manipulation, by expectations that drained his peace, but instead of collapsing, he learned. He learned that real strength doesn't chase attention, it reclaims focus. And once he does, everything changes. His mind becomes sharper, his energy untouchable, and his presence impossible to manipulate. Because when a Sigma male becomes detached, he doesn't lose connection with others, he gains command over himself. And that's the most dangerous kind of power. The one built in silence. If you've ever chosen calm over chaos, logic over reaction, or peace over people, this video is for you. Subscribe to UltraWise for more deep insights into Sigma psychology and the quiet power of emotional mastery. And tell me in the comments, has your detachment ever been mistaken for not caring? He learns that distance sharpens perception. For most of his life, the Sigma male gives too much attention, too much reaction, too much explanation. He listens when others complain, helps when no one else will, and shows up even when he's already drained. But one day, something shifts. He stops rushing to fix, to defend, to explain. Instead, he steps back. Not out of anger, but out of awareness. That distance becomes his turning point. When the Sigma finally chooses space, the noise begins to fade. The emotional fog clears. He starts to see the people around him for who they truly are, not who they pretended to be when they still needed him. The compliments that once flattered him now sound like manipulation. The chaos that once distracted him now looks like control. In silence, he realizes how much he was giving his energy to people who only valued it when it served their needs. Distance gives him perspective. It shows him who checks in when there's nothing to gain, and who disappears when the benefits dry up. It reveals that many relationships were never built on connection, just convenience. From afar, he starts noticing the patterns he couldn't see up close. The lies hidden in kindness, the self-interest masked as loyalty. The subtle power plays he used to ignore because he was too focused on keeping peace. And once he sees it, he can't unsee it. He stops chasing explanations from people who showed him their truth through action. He stops waiting for apologies that will never come. The Sigma learns that distance isn't isolation, it's intelligence. It's the emotional reset that clears away illusions. In that solitude, he refines his intuition. He rebuilds his confidence. He becomes sharper, calmer, harder to manipulate. What used to break him now becomes data. Every betrayal turns into insight. Every disappointment becomes a lesson in human nature. Because when the Sigma learns that distance sharpens perception, he no longer feels the need to prove or explain. He observes. He understands, and then he moves, not with emotion, but with precision. That's when his detachment evolves from self-protection into strategy. And the man who once felt drained by others' chaos now becomes the one thing they can predict: silent, self-assured, and completely in control. He no longer reacts. He responds. There was a time when the Sigma male used to react to everything: the disrespect, the betrayal, the subtle digs that others threw to test his control. Every comment felt personal, every argument a battle that had to be won. But over time, something inside him shifted. He realized that reacting was exactly what they wanted: to pull him into their chaos, to make him play a game that could only drain him. That's when he stopped giving away his energy so easily. Now, when someone tries to provoke him, he doesn't raise his voice or defend himself. He pauses. He observes. He studies their motives like a scientist watching a pattern unfold. He's learned that most people don't argue for truth. They argue for dominance, validation, or attention. And when you stop giving them the reaction they crave, you strip them of their control. This doesn't mean he's emotionless. Far from it. The Sigma feels deeply, but he channels that energy with precision. His calm isn't weakness, it's calculation. Every second of silence is him assessing the situation, deciding what and who deserves a response. Sometimes that response is nothing at all. Sometimes walking away is the sharpest statement he can make. He no longer fights to prove himself. He doesn't waste words explaining his worth or arguing with people who've already decided to misunderstand him. Instead, he lets time and results do the talking. His patience unnerves those who mistake quiet for surrender, because when he does act, it's deliberate, final, and impossible to reverse. What used to trigger him now teaches him. What once demanded his reaction now earns only his silence. And in that silence, he gains something most people never achieve: control. He's no longer a slave to impulse or ego. Because the Sigma understands that reaction is emotional debt, it costs peace, clarity, and time. But a response? A response is chosen, intentional, and powerful. It's how he stays unshaken while others crumble under pressure. So when he finally stops reacting and starts responding, he becomes untouchable. The world can throw chaos, insults, or manipulation his way, but he'll only move when it serves his purpose. And when he does, everyone will know it wasn't emotion that led him there. It was mastery. He understands that emotional control is power. The Sigma male didn't always have control. There was a time when anger used to burn through him like fire, when disappointment made him withdraw for weeks, and when betrayal left him questioning his worth. He used to think strength meant reacting louder, proving harder, or showing that he didn't care. But that was just another form of losing control. Eventually, he realized that the most powerful man in the room isn't the loudest. It's the one who stays calm when everyone else loses their composure. Through pain and loss, the Sigma learned that emotions aren't enemies, they're signals. Anger tells him when a boundary's been crossed. Sadness tells him something meaningful has ended. But instead of letting those emotions steer him, he studies them. He turns them into information, not instruction. That shift, from reacting to reflecting, changes everything. Now, when someone tries to manipulate him through guilt or fear, he doesn't bite. He recognizes emotional traps instantly. He can see when someone's tone hides an agenda, when kindness is being used as control, and when silence is meant to provoke. Instead of fighting fire with fire, he lets the other person expose themselves through their own behavior. His restraint becomes his dominance. The world calls him cold, but what they really mean is that he's disciplined. He's learned to sit with anger without letting it explode, to face pain without letting it consume him, to respond with logic even when his heart is screaming for revenge. That balance is rare, and it's what makes him unpredictable. When you can't be emotionally manipulated, you become ungovernable, and the Sigma male knows it. His power lies in his ability to remain calm in the middle of storms, to think clearly when others are drowning in feelings. He's the man who doesn't need to raise his voice, because his energy speaks louder than emotion ever could. True emotional control isn't suppression. It's mastery. It's choosing peace over impulse, purpose over pride. And when the Sigma finally understands that, he becomes unstoppable. Because no one, no situation, no betrayal, no chaos can control a man who has mastered his own emotions. He stops explaining his absence. There was a time when the Sigma male felt the need to justify everything. His silence, his withdrawal, his need for space. He'd explain why he wasn't replying as quickly, why he seemed distant, why he preferred solitude. But eventually, he realized something powerful. People who truly value your presence never demand an explanation for your absence. When a Sigma stops explaining his absence, it's not because he's arrogant, it's because he's evolved. He's learned that disappearing isn't a punishment, it's a form of self-respect. The world expects constant accessibility, instant responses, and emotional availability on demand. But the Sigma has outgrown that illusion. He knows his time and energy are sacred, and if he needs to disappear to regain his balance, he will, unapologetically. While others chase validation through presence, he builds power through distance. His absence becomes his filter. The people who care will notice and reach out with understanding. The ones who don't will simply fade into silence, and that silence becomes his answer. In solitude, he doesn't feel lonely, he feels restored. His mind sharpens, his intuition deepens, and his emotional energy resets. The chaos that once drained him loses its pull. He no longer needs to justify his need for peace to anyone. That freedom, the freedom from explaining himself, becomes the foundation of his power. Those who misunderstand his distance will label him cold or detached, but they fail to see that his absence isn't rejection, it's protection. It's his way of ensuring that he doesn't give more than what's deserved. He understands that constant availability cheapens value, and silence restores it. So when he walks away, he doesn't announce it, he doesn't post about it or explain his reasons. He simply fades, because those who mattered already understood, and those who didn't never will. The Sigma no longer seeks validation through explanation. His peace speaks louder than his words ever could. And by the time the world notices his absence, he's already transformed, wiser, calmer, and far beyond the reach of anyone who once took his presence for granted. He uses isolation as strategy. For most people, isolation feels like punishment, a space filled with silence, uncertainty, and discomfort. But for the Sigma male, isolation is something entirely different. It's not loneliness, it's recalibration. It's the quiet space where his thoughts sharpen, his intuition strengthens, and his purpose becomes clearer. While others use company to distract themselves from pain, the Sigma uses solitude to understand it, break it apart, and rebuild from it, stronger than before. He's learned that when he steps away from the noise of the world, from its opinions, demands, and expectations, he gains a kind of clarity that can't be found anywhere else. Isolation becomes his lab, where he studies patterns, reflects on past mistakes, and plans his next moves with surgical precision. While others are busy reacting, he's strategizing. His silence isn't retreat, it's preparation. There's something deeply unsettling about a man who disappears, not out of weakness, but out of discipline. People start to wonder what he's planning, what he's building, what he's becoming. That uncertainty gives him power, because mystery creates distance, and distance commands respect. The Sigma understands that you can't hear your own thoughts when the world is constantly talking. So he chooses silence, not because he wants to hide, but because he wants to see clearly. He uses isolation to reset his mind, to separate emotion from logic, to reconnect with the mission that truly matters. And when he comes back, he doesn't return the same. Every period of isolation makes him more dangerous, not in a violent way, but in an unshakable one. He returns emotionally lighter, mentally stronger, and spiritually focused. The chaos that once consumed him now seems irrelevant. The distractions that once pulled him off course no longer register. Most people fear being alone because they've never met themselves fully. But the Sigma meets himself daily in solitude, and that's why he moves differently. His calmness unnerves people. His focus intimidates them because while they waste time trying to stay seen, he's mastering the art of disappearing and using that disappearance to return 10 steps ahead. To the world, isolation looks like silence, but to a Sigma, it's strategy. It's where he turns his pain into purpose, his confusion into clarity, and his solitude into unstoppable power. He no longer fights battles that don't deserve him. There was a time when the Sigma male fought for everything: relationships, validation, being understood. He'd step into every argument, every misunderstanding, every confrontation just to prove his point or protect his integrity. But eventually, experience taught him something liberating. Not every battle deserves a warrior. Some fights exist only to drain your energy, not to help you grow. Now, when someone tries to provoke him, he doesn't react, he evaluates. He asks himself, does this battle lead to peace or just noise? If it doesn't serve his purpose or growth, he walks away without hesitation. His silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. He knows the true enemy isn't always outside. Sometimes it's the temptation to prove himself to people who will never understand his value. The Sigma male has mastered the art of selective engagement. He saves his fire for what truly matters: his goals, his principles, and his future. When someone tries to bait him into emotional chaos, he no longer defends himself, he simply disengages. Because he's learned that real power isn't about winning arguments, it's about refusing to be dragged into them. People misinterpret his calm as weakness, not realizing that he's already won the moment he stopped reacting. While others waste energy explaining, defending, or competing, the Sigma uses that same energy to evolve. He fights in silence, not with words, but with results. His success becomes his statement, his focus his weapon, and his peace his shield. Every time he chooses not to fight a meaningless battle, he grows stronger. He conserves his mental clarity, emotional stability, and time, the three resources the undisciplined constantly waste. He knows that not every insult needs a response, not every challenge deserves attention, and not every person is worth convincing. So now, when chaos calls his name, he smiles and walks away. He's no longer proving anything. He's too focused on becoming something. The Sigma male no longer fights battles that don't deserve him, because he's realized that peace is the ultimate victory, and silence, when chosen consciously, is the loudest form of strength there is. He masters the art of letting go. Letting go isn't weakness for the Sigma male, it's wisdom. He's learned that holding on to things that no longer align with his growth is just another form of self-sabotage. Whether it's people, habits, or emotions, he knows that attachment is the quiet thief of progress. So he releases, not with bitterness, but with clarity. In the past, he might have tried to fix everything. He'd chase closure, rewrite endings, or carry guilt for things that weren't his fault. But eventually, the Sigma realizes that not everything broken needs repair. Some things need release. Letting go becomes his discipline, not his defeat. It's how he clears space for evolution, for sharper focus, and for peace that no one else can give him. He understands that holding on doesn't prove strength. It proves fear. Fear of loss, fear of emptiness, fear of starting over. But he's outgrown those fears. He knows that freedom begins where attachment ends, so he stops forcing people to stay, stops begging life to make sense, and stops holding on to what resists being held. Instead, he chooses detachment, clean, calm, and deliberate. When the Sigma lets go, he doesn't announce it. There's no argument, no goodbye speech, no revenge. He simply fades from what no longer feeds him and reinvests that energy into becoming unshakable. His silence says everything. I don't need to prove my worth to stay. I only need peace to grow. People often realize what they lost when he walks away, not because he punished them, but because they finally feel the absence of his presence. His emotional control, his patience, his depth. Those things don't come twice. Letting go for him is a skill forged in pain. It's what keeps him light in a heavy world. He doesn't fear endings anymore. He welcomes them, knowing each one clears the path for something greater. And that's why he's untouchable, because nothing owns him anymore. The Sigma male masters the art of letting go, not because he's stopped caring, but because he finally understands that peace is found in release, not resistance. And once he learns that, nothing and no one can pull him back into the chaos he's already outgrown. He returns unshakable. When the Sigma male disappears, people assume he's retreating, licking his wounds, second-guessing himself or losing momentum, but they misunderstand him completely. His silence isn't weakness, it's construction. While others rush to prove they've moved on, he vanishes to rebuild himself in ways no one expects. And when he returns, he doesn't come back louder, he comes back unshakable. During his absence, he studies everything: himself, his mistakes, his triggers, and the motives of those around him. He breaks himself down to the core, stripping away the noise and ego, leaving behind only precision and purpose. Every scar becomes a lesson. Every betrayal becomes a blueprint. Every loss becomes the foundation of a higher version of himself. By the time he reemerges, he's not the same man who left. The emotions that once ruled him are now disciplined. The doubts that once haunted him are now quiet. He no longer seeks validation, closure, or permission. He's built his peace from scratch, and it's made of steel. That's what makes him unshakable. Not arrogance, but self-mastery. People who once underestimated him don't recognize him anymore. His energy is different, colder, quieter, and more controlled. He doesn't need to prove his strength. His presence alone commands respect. The chaos that used to distract him can't touch him now. He's learned to move with strategy, to speak with intention, and to disappear before anyone realizes how much he's changed. His calmness unsettles people who once thrived on his reactions. His silence now speaks louder than confrontation ever could. He's no longer reactive. He's responsive. No longer emotional. He's effective. No longer chasing. He's choosing. When the Sigma male returns, he carries the kind of peace that can't be disturbed, and the kind of focus that can't be broken. His composure becomes his armor, and his discipline becomes his weapon. He doesn't seek revenge. His growth is the revenge. He doesn't want validation. His results speak for him. And he doesn't explain his comeback, because those who need to understand it were never meant to. When the Sigma returns, he's not looking for recognition, he's looking for alignment. And that's why he's unstoppable, because the man who rebuilt himself in silence can't be shaken by noise ever again. When the Sigma male returns, he's not the same man who walked away. He's the one who learned, healed, and evolved in silence. His calm is no longer fragile. It's forged through every betrayal, every rejection, every night spent rebuilding his purpose alone. That's why his presence now feels different, grounded, focused, untouchable. He doesn't move to prove anymore. He moves to grow. And that quiet confidence, that's what unsettles everyone who once thought they broke him. Because the Sigma's real power isn't in how loud he roars, it's in how deeply he no longer needs to. If you've ever walked away, rebuilt yourself, and come back stronger than anyone expected, this video was made for you. Subscribe for more insights into the Sigma mindset, emotional mastery, and silent transformation. And tell me in the comments, when was the moment you realized your silence had become your power?